Welcome back to Collecting Cars. Now today we're back at our partners V Management and we're going to take a look at one of Pininfarina's most beautifully designed Ferraris. Now sadly it is not this 365 GTB4 Daytona, but the car in question shares a number of little things with this car. They are both front-engined V12 cars. They are both manual and they are both dressed in this gorgeous blue and tan. The car I'm talking about is the supremely stylish 456 GT. Apart from its obvious beauty, the Ferrari 456 GT was built to be a more practical grand tourer that could be loaded up with a family of four from Swindon, let's say, and driven to Saint-Tropez in comfort and at speed in the same day. And you probably would be driving somewhere as glitzy as the south of France because you'd have to be pretty wealthy to buy one of these when they were new. The sticker price back then was nudging £170,000. Even so, it was still 30 grand cheaper than the Aston Martin Vantage or the Bentley Continental R. The 456 came in two models, a 6-speed manual known as the GT and a 4-speed automatic known as the GTA. In 1998, a 456M was released, the M simply standing for Modificato or modification, which was a facelifted version with a larger grille, no nose vents and a carbon fibre bonnet. There are also some other improvements to the interior, the door sills, suspension, brakes and steering. And the M was in fact the last Ferrari to use pop-up headlamps, being replaced in 2004 by the 612 Scaglietti. So it's comfortable and practical owing to its moderately sized rear seats in the back, but it's also got a manual gated gearbox and it's a front-engined V12 Ferrari. What other car could offer this kind of styling, practicality and performance back in the 1990s? Now with the lights up, this isn't too dissimilar to the sleepy pop-up headlights of the BMW 8 Series of the same era. Both very cool cars, and let's face it, we all love pop-up headlights and wish they were still around. Now certain cars look great in specific colours, and I think the 456 in particular looks good in a dark blue. This one is actually a Le Mans blue. Also the TDF blue looked fantastic, as well as Swatters blue, but the 456 in particular wears this colour very, very well. It suits its very sort of stealth-like profile. It's a subtle car. It doesn't like to shout about itself, so being a darker blue colour works very well. Sure, if some people like it in red, that's absolutely fine. People love red Ferraris, but a 456 in red, less so. Dark blue looks very classy. Pininfarina did a very fine job of this car, and what they've done particularly nicely is managed to keep these things like these air intakes without having to have too many sharp lines to distract the eye away from the rest of the car. Down the front wing and the side of the door, you've just got this very subtle scoop air intake just below the wing mirror, and that line continues round to the back of the car and this very neat rear end. The back of the car is beautifully simple, and we've got these lovely twin light clusters at the back, and the prancing horse just sat proudly in the centre of those two. Simple, uncluttered and elegant. It looks fantastic. Just below the number plate we've got this little rear spoiler down at the bottom there. And as you look down the side of the car, one thing that you do know is how tucked in these wheels are, and they're also not super low profile, so that means that the ride is actually very smooth. It becomes a very usable car, particularly out on these English country B roads. You're not going to get rattled around on super low profile tiles. These can actually handle it very nicely. These are very sensibly running on a set of 17-inch Pirelli P0s. Now what I do want to do is take a look at the engine before we get back out on the road. What's really cool actually is that when you lift this up, look, you're left with the gaps of the pop-up headlights. Under the hood is this magnificent Ferrari V12 producing 436 horsepower with a 0 to 60 coming in a claimed 4.8 seconds. Ferrari also tweaked the traditional V12 firing order to give it an improved lower end torque. I mean, for a four-seater Grand Tourer, you don't expect something as impressive as that. What's quite cool on this is, as you can see, the throttle mechanism here, the cable actually runs in a U shape all the way round here. And over time, some of these can sort of slacken off and you can lose horsepower, but it's quite an easy fix, and this one is nice and tight, so we haven't lost any of those horses. Right, let's get back out on the road. The first thing you notice, and one of my favourite things, is this gorgeous, gorgeous gated shifter. Oh, just listen to it click-clacking away. It's just wonderful. It's like a glove, this thing. As soon as you sit in it, you feel like you're meant to be sat here. It's really exquisitely comfortable. The steering wheel is perfectly sized and sort of melts into your hands, and there's no fuss, no buttons, anything like that. It makes the car perhaps feel sportier than it is, but then this car still can really hustle. So let's just put the foot down a little bit. Oh, sounds fabulous. Feels good. I mean, you just cannot beat these gated manual gearboxes of Ferraris of this era. They just look good, they feel good, they're an absolute pleasure to drive. And then we've got this steering wheel, this beautiful 3-spoke steering wheel. It just epitomises the simplicity of things at that time, compared with all the buttons and switches that you now have. Feels fantastic. So of course, if you want to get noticed, there's plenty more shouty V8s and V12s. I mean, you can choose from this era plenty of other cars. I mean, there's the 360, or if you want to have a V12, you can go for the 550, which is faster, but doesn't have the same kind of practicality or stealthness that this has. And really, what are you losing with this? Yeah, maybe a bit of speed, but this can get up and go when it needs to. What you do gain with this is exclusivity, because there weren't that many of these made. Right, what we haven't done is talked around this interior a bit more, so I'm going to find a spot, pull over, and talk you through what the cabin's like. So let's talk about the interior. First things first. Well, let's start in the back, because first of all, it has one. I can fit in comfortably. And that just adds a great layer of practicality to this, because you've got extra storage space. I have jumped into the back, I do fit, and yes, I could sit there, albeit not with the seat all the way back, but would be comfortable for a couple of hours at least. Now up front, from the driver's seat anyway, you have one of the most simple setups you could find on a car nowadays. You look at the dials straight ahead of you, speedometer, rev counter, and then you've got this gorgeous sports steering wheel, which actually makes you feel a bit more sporty than perhaps the car looks from the outside anyway. And it's completely uncluttered. There's nothing on there at all other than the beautiful prancing horse of the Ferrari emblem. The handbrake is down to your side, and that's a fly-off handbrake. I actually like having a fly-off handbrake down to the side rather than sort of trying to jerk up from this angle. Those I find very comfortable. But perhaps everybody's favourite feature on the interior of this car is this beautiful chrome gated gear shifter. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous to look at and to use. It makes this lovely click-clack sound as you change through the gears. I love these because the wand just feels fantastic in your hands, but then you can also look down in to see the gearbox beneath the gate. The rest of the cabin is set out for a very luxurious grand tourer. There is leather everywhere. These seats offer the right balance between being supportive but also very, very comfortable. The car's at a real sweet spot because you have all of the things that you do want: electric windows, air conditioning, electric seats, an uncluttered steering wheel, manual gearbox, but without diluting the driving experience. You've got this nice centre console in between the driver and passenger, which then sort of gives the driver or passenger a sort of feeling that you're cocooned in this lovely cockpit. Amongst the switches and dials in the centre console, then you've got a clock, your temperature gauge for oil and water, and then obviously your fuel gauge. Below that, buttons for opening the boot, turning your fog lights on, turning the heating controls, and then on the far right, whether you want the hard or soft suspension settings. Personally, I'll just keep it in soft for most of the time what we're driving around, and it's been very, very nice. One cool thing that Ferrari definitely probably didn't think of, but is coming into its own right now, is that down the center console there are these 3 trays, and just look at this. I've got an iPhone 11 Pro here, and that fits beautifully neatly into that little slot there. Obviously sunglasses in the other side, but that's very, very well placed next to the cigarette lighter, so you can put in there your phone charger or whatever you have. So it's all very convenient and well thought out, really. Right, 456 GT, here we go. Perhaps one of the most comfortable Ferraris of all time. If you get into one of these and start driving, the thing that you're going to notice the most is this lovely gearbox. The feeling as it clicks through the gates is utterly addictive. When you want this thing to get a bit angry, it can really, really hustle. Your passengers might arrive looking somewhat surprised by the speed of this thing, but there won't be a hair out of place on them, and they will be as calm as Hindu cows. If you were a wealthy parent back in the mid-90s, then this would be the perfect car, because there's virtually no compromise. You could do the school run and then park it outside a casino square, and it just looks right in virtually every environment you put it in. But that's another thing that this thing does well. It's not too wide. It's not a ridiculously wide V12 supercar. You can actually get it down these country roads with, not saying zero stress, but you're not clipping the hedges, that's for sure. I really wish I was driving home in this car tonight. I really do, because it ticks just so many boxes. It's really got a chameleon-like ability to sort of adapt into any situation. There are very few places where this car would not be appropriate. Now, some people might strike off Ferrari from their consideration list because of the perceptions of maintenance bills, but actually these older Ferraris need not be too scary, because let's face it, by now all the little gremlins that perhaps plagued these cars when they first came out, or some of the reliability issues, for example, have all been ironed out. The other thing which is total classic Ferrari is the horn on this car. Just have a listen to this. Oh, that is just brilliant. Driving the 456 then, it feels very composed, and you feel very sophisticated driving it. If you're looking for something that extra special, that's comfortable, practical and fast, then I'd seriously urge you to get over to collectingcars.com and check out the listing of this car, because it is a honey. This particular car has been prepared for sale by our partners at V Management, who've managed the transport, photography and detailing of the car before delivering it to the new owner once the auction is complete, making listing and selling with Collecting Cars the simplest way of selling your collectible. This really is one of the ultimate sleepers, a connoisseur's car. Ferrari made a little over 3,000 of these, and even today there are very few cars as tasteful, as beautiful or as powerful.